What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Hollywood Already Did It, your weekly movie podcast for things that have been rebooted, remade, sequelized, and are otherwise unoriginal and not new. However, this week, there are only new and original ideas out at the box office. So
Who'd have thunk?
I guess, but it's also like, it's that weird catch-22 where it's like, oh man, nothing but new original ideas out, but it's really hard to find a screening of Judy, and I don't want to see Abominable.
Abominable has no concern for me whatsoever.
So what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, I, Blake Schultz, and my co-host Terrence Tatum
Hello, everyone.
are going to talk about Joker before it comes out, but we're going to do something a little different. Obviously, if you're unaware of it by now, Joker is a movie about the titular Batman villain without the Batman. We're going to see how well that goes. So I thought it would be fun to pick a few other villains in his rogue gallery and see what kind of ideas or characters we would want to see alone in a solo movie. Because this is now a trend, right?
Yeah.
Sony's doing the same thing. We're getting Venom without Spider-Man, Morbius,
Yeah.
Madam Web, Craven.
They have had Black Cat on the books for a while there.
So yeah, Silver and Black and Silver for Silver Sable and Black Cat. I'm sure if this movie does well, which it's currently poised to make over $100,000 opening weekend,
They're going to start doing this.
all 10-star reviews, giant ovations from Cannes,
theory,
Venice.
Suicide Squad technically is about the villains.
Suicide Squad.
Harley's movie, whatever. I'm not saying that title, but Harley's movie with all the other extra words after.
Birds of Prey and the Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, obviously. The title that everyone needs, because if there's one thing that America likes to do, it's read. But I'm sure that this will kick open the door for, say, a Lex Luthor movie.
Which would be fascinating.
Which would be great.
Yeah.
Although, well, we could maybe talk about that one at the end, because he really needs...
For him to be the point that what he is. I was going back and forth with him, too, because I thought the same thing. I was like, this is definitely lead to Lex, but you need to have Kal-El around.
You need to have that jealousy.
His neurosis needs to come in.
You need to have that, how am I not the hero? I'm the hero. Yeah. He's the villain. That's the whole thing.
I could see if Marvel wanted to introduce Doctor Doom without bringing Fantastic Four.
That was slated for 20th century before the buyout, so that might still happen.
Right.
This is definitely a road we're going down. Even things like The Boys, we're seeing the darker side of it.
Correct.
It's interesting to do it without the character, because even somebody like the Joker, I feel like, is that juxtaposition of the hero and the villain, and
should have the weight of the other side.
Right.
To go with chaos. Yeah.
And it's an interesting thesis, especially for the Joker, to be like, look at this problematic person. We're not going to. We hope, we haven't seen the movie.
I hope
we're not going to try to glorify it or heroize it.
They're saying they're not, so I'm going to stick to their.
You'd think it would be. I know I talk about these all the time on this podcast. It would be like the old gangster movies that would open with
PSA.
Like these are bad people and we don't do it, and they die at the end, and that's kind of how it should be.
I almost wonder if they didn't have it because of everything that's happening now, they might try to throw one up there.
I would love it.
Yeah.
I would love it, because really what we're doing is we're just doing old Scorsese movies. We might as well turn it all the way back and add some James Cagney in there as well, and really get
in there.
But somebody the other day, yesterday actually asked me, they're like, well, why do we even need to make this Joker movie? And I was like, well, if you really want to get down to it, the unfortunate reality is these people do exist. Mm-hmm. So if you really want to make a movie that's reflective of the dangerous parts of our time, this is the movie to make.
Correct.
We're hoping it doesn't inspire chaos, but the reality is let's turn over that stone and see what it looks at.
Exactly.
It's I'm sure there's going to be a ton in it of like today's politics and what's going to be born out of it, and watching this character, this deranged, probably a lot of showcasing on mental health and not getting your meds. And for all we know, this could be a very interesting movie, but it only takes one person to ruin it.
That's
which is a shame. Because it should just be, a movie should just be at its worst, a movie should be fun, and at its best, a movie should be like a think piece.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. In either case, there should be an emotional resonance. In no world
should what happens on screen
be replicated.
Right.
Right. Hey, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
So do you want to, we each picked two Batman villains.
Yes.
Do you want to kick us off with yours?
I will. I'll save my better one for the second one. My easier one that I think you could do like almost a horror crime drama is Victor Zsasz. Like, I think he would be fat because you don't really. He can be crazy and be a psychopath without having Batman anywhere near the picture. It could just be like kind of like Spawn sometimes does when you have Sam and Twitch with them.
Right.
It's just cops trying to stop this serial killer, but do it. I would almost do it from the victim side, so that he is more like the horror person in the background, sort of like.
Seven.
Yeah.
You want to make Seven.
Exactly. That's exactly what I would make. Yeah. I would do it with Victor Zsasz and Gotham, because Gotham, for some reason, is always a shit show all the time.
Well, I think
Doesn't
you
matter
need
what time of the
Gotham.
year. Yes.
If you don't have a little bit of Batman paint, you're
you
not
have to
making a
have Gotham.
DC
Right,
movie.
And that's kind of what the Gotham TV series got away with doing their villains. They're like, well, this city is crap, so that's why these villains come about.
It's another example of
just doing
Batman without Batman.
Right. And I think us doing a serial killer from the victim's point of view is where these guys are getting picked off from time to time, and this just unhinged man with cuts all over his body, and kind of find out through the film that the reason why those cuts exist is because, and I would say almost like after the second time he does it, we show on screen that's the reason why he has all these slices on him. Because the first time you'll just see him physically with cuts all over. I'm like, wow, that's a weird thing. For people who don't know who Victor Zsasz is. For us, we know why those happen. But for the uninitiated, show him with all those and like, oh my god, he looks crazy. And then the second time he does it, gets away with the kill, you show him actually like slicing himself in representation for the people that he actually kills. You're like, oh my god, this man is doing this for this. And it's a weird thing because I feel like Joker is doing it, but I don't always want to know every single thing about a person who is nuts.
No.
Like, I don't need you to pull out all the
I don't
threads.
want us to ever relate too much to a terrorist.
Exactly, because then you start becoming
It makes a lot of
empathetic,
sense.
and I'm like, I don't want that to happen. So for the Victor Zsasz stuff, I would just like him to be a psycho, like 100% a psycho.
Right.
And I don't want to give any humanity or any heart
Well,
to him.
I mean, if you're doing it like Seven too, right? Your main characters would probably be Gordon and Bullock
correct.
tracking down this villain, rather than it really being what the Joker is doing, where the spotlight is on him.
Right.
It's that BoJack Horseman the last season where it's like, well, we're not doing anything. We're just normalizing this bad behavior.
Right.
And you're like, well, crap. Like, that also might be dangerous to do. I think also the crazier your villain is, the harder it becomes to relate.
Exactly.
Where it's like, so much of what we're seeing in the Joker is like, look at his mom and
Right,
this
his
girl, and he's
girlfriend,
getting
and
picked on and
his
beat
comedy's
up.
not taking
And
off, and he wants to be up where the big boys are on stage.
there's going to be a lot of frustration in the
Yeah.
movie. And I think people will relate to that because everyone's been kind of kicked down and frustrated. And especially in this current climate, unfortunately, both the right and the left
are
feel
doing
like
it to
they're
each
being
other.
pushed
Correct.
down, which is madness. But and it's also a big problem. But, with somebody like Zaz, you almost become somebody who revels in it a little bit. Like when
he
you
enjoys the hunt and the payoff of doing it, and I don't want to take that away from him, and I also don't want to over-explain it so that the audience can relate to it.
right.
Because that's when it gets dangerous.
Yeah, he's a good one too because he is just a regular bad guy.
Right.
There is
There's
no
powers to him. And he's not super outside of the cutting himself. He's not super eccentric. Where like Joker's wearing purple and like
Right.
wearing face and like gas masking people or penguins. Like it's just him by himself. Not a gangster. He's just a nut.
Well, I mean, you don't even really need a superhero in that context at all.
It's just a serial guy. Exactly.
Like even the Joker, you need Batman because it's a symbol and a symbol,
Correct.
right? Even though it is like if the Joker and Superman went up against each other, the second he can get his hands on him, it's over.
Right.
But it's everything before that. The
Correct.
Joker almost plays out more like a jigsaw character,
Yes,
where it's
he's
like
playing these games.
he's gonna ruin you, but in the end of the day,
you'll get the upper
you
hand
can
on
beat
him.
the
Right.
shit out of him.
Correct.
And that's usually how it goes. That's why in the Arkham Asylum games, they needed to make him a Hulk
Yeah.
and ruin their game at
Ruin
the end.
end of that level.
Oh, what a good game. And it
Up
just.
until the last.
That's why the other two are better.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore after that. That would be great. I would watch a Victor Zsasz movie. I would watch it. My concern would be that it would be too similar to Seven. Do you get concerned that he is such a like regular character
he is
that
so not generic, but he is so general on that type of like serial killer style that it almost becomes Son of Sam or like Seven. You're like, oh, the similarities won't be that far. I mean that separate away from each other. But I do think that if you because Gotham itself is also a character, and I think if you put it in that world, it could be enough of a change where you're like, okay, this is something, a new coat of paint. Over
Well, and I think you'd get into the detective of like what are his kills? Why is he doing it?
Yeah, or like, and because granted, he is by chaos, so he doesn't really pick and choose. But it would be interesting if they added, because you could change up the story a little bit. If he was killing off the elite, or if he was doing if he was picking who he was
Crooked cops
exactly.
do this.
Yeah.
You could make him almost, if the Joker is your 70s Gotham.
Right.
I'm not saying it needs to be connected to, we're not executives. This is all fake. I'm not saying it needs to be connected. This is all fake, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you were to connect it to, and you just made it like almost the way the Gotham show does, and like Gotham Chapter 2 is Zaz and Gotham Chapter 1 is Joker,
Right.
he could be like the acolyte of the Joker.
Yeah.
And be like, well, his was everything, but mine is really going to be the politician, the corrupt policeman, this, that, the other. Because that's how you make that character relatable and still crazy, is you go, well, they deserved it.
Yeah.
I'm doing this to right a wrong.
Right.
And then you do kind of get that, like, heroism that
But you would get the heroism, but the audience would still know that what he's doing is
bad.
Right, exactly.
Well, that's the real trick, right?
Yeah.
You then just sprinkle in two of them who are like, well, he was a good cop and he
Yeah.
fucked up.
Yeah.
That's how you beat him at the
Exactly.
end. It's like, well, what have I done, Victor? And it's Gordon. He's got to be like, nothing. And then he just goes to jail.
Exactly.
My first one that I really like, because I think you could build it into almost like the same kind of Joker style movie, where it's more of a dramatic, creepier take, would be Clayface.
Ah, yes.
And I think if you really, really modernized it and you used kind of these ideas of chasing fame and chasing people and likes, clicks,
Right.
this, and you have this actor who's a failure and he's tried everything, the big acting, the YouTubing, the podcasting, and nothing's connecting. And then you give him this unique power.
Yeah.
He can start to kind of usurp that and like start small and get bigger and
But
bigger
it
and
builds up to a point. Yeah.
you could almost make him like the Manson murderer.
When
He
he
could
starts-
start a cult.
Feeling good within what he's doing, and it just starts getting bigger and almost too big. Not almost. It gets too big for him.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
do a lot. You could make him the cult leader who like
Yeah.
usurps a Brad Pitt type character, kills him off, and then is like, well, now I just want the
I'll just-
followers. And I have all this power.
Yeah.
You could make him like ruin the people who've rejected him, have him turn into a big producer, and you get like a Me Too situation.
Yeah.
And he just starts ruining these people's careers. Or even reverse it and just, he turns into these people and is like, I'm going to have you do this and then I'm going to have you. There's a lot you could do with that character and still make it very the king of comedy, very misery, and make it like fucked up and sad. And you could show, I think, a side of Hollywood that you don't really see that much. Like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is like, look at everybody's famous. And I feel like a lot of the actors' stories now, your BoJack Horseman's, your Californications, your Once Upon a Time in Hollywood's, take these characters who are like, well, he's down on his luck, but he still has the Hollywood Hills mansion and 8 cars, and really he's just a little washed up.
Yeah.
Really, he's just 40, but his TV show ran for a decade, and now he doesn't know what to do.
Now he's out of it.
I want the character who's already in the 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood who can only afford to eat like dry lentils.
Yeah.
And I want you to see, the fear of idealization, the fear of like fanship, really. Like we live in this like toxic fandom world, and to extrapolate that would be crazy.
especially if you're doing it in this time, that would be fascinating to watch that, how he reacts to like with social media and how all of that like interacts back with him, and he's just feeding. That would be fascinating to watch.
Right. Because every time it stops working, he can just become somebody else.
He can switch it up.
So then you also have like, that's probably who your protagonist would be somebody now who's just chasing a fan to have. Like he just keeps going to everything and he keeps trying to get away from this person.
Yeah.
And you could just build it. I think you would set it now. He can move out of Gotham. Like he's one of the few characters that you can kind
don't
of
need to
remove
see.
everything from.
Right.
You could have a little connection to Gotham. Maybe it's like somebody comes from there and it's like, well, I killed all these people
Right.
and then I left
Yeah.
to start my new life in Hollywood.
Yes. That would be good. That would be good. My My second, this one was hard. My first one was hard because I couldn't. There were a lot of characters that I couldn't disassociate from Batman. It became
It's tough.
difficult.
Two-Face, I feel like, needs
Two-Face,
Batman, Penguin, Bane.
Riddler. Like, it was one of those. I was like, these guys need to have him. Like Riddler, you have to have somebody who's a detective to kind of play in that game of questioning and all the games and whatnot. And then also Two-Face and Penguin.
They're kind of just
become
gangsters.
Mafia films, and like that's real simple. Like that's a base form. So I went with my second favorite villain of all the Batman Rogue Gallery is Mr. Freeze. And so, but I would do this almost like a romance drama because that's Freeze's whole hang up is Nora.
Yeah.
So my first half of that film would be the courtship of Freeze and Nora, and then halfway through that film, he gets the news that she's fatally ill, and he just loses it because at that point you have to almost set up that Victor Freeze had no one else, like the only person he had in his life left. You could almost make it that he was an adopted, so he got moved around from foster home to foster home to foster home, and then the one thing that was his bright and shining light was Nora. He gets Nora, they fall madly in love. It's a whole courtship. He's like, oh my God, I've never found anybody like this before in my life. And then after years of marriage, he thinks everything is great. He's a well-renowned scientist. She gets fatally ill, and his world just disintegrates, like just falls completely apart. And I think that would be fascinating to watch because unlike someone else who would probably be like, all right, I need to figure out this, this, and this, he goes to madness. And there was something probably in his childhood that was like, why I'm going the wrong way, and whatever it is, it could be like his family, like whatever that is, something impetus-wise, instead of I'm going to put more research into before I lose my wife, I'm going to freeze her, because that's a smart idea.
Right.
And then I'm going to do everything humanly possible while she has this clock of I'm on ice. I'm going to do everything humanly possible to make sure that I get enough money and finances to cure her and keep her in this position long enough that I can fix. If I can't figure out the cure, I need to keep her in this position long enough so that I can get to that point. And I think that would be fascinating to watch. It's like what starts off as a romance drama turns into a guy just de-evolving into madness because he can't fix the one thing that he might lose.
Right.
And that's why I always, for me, emotionally, you can sometimes Freeze can become a little bit too goofy, especially if you do it the way that Batman and Robin does.
Right. But you want
want
a
the
Heart of
humanity
Darkness
side.
or Heart of Darkness, Heart of Ice Batman animated series. The free, and that's kind of the interesting challenge I think with him is Batman exists because he just exists, but Freeze really is kind of independent of everything else.
Right.
There's never a lot of working with the other villains, doing all this other stuff.
On himself. Even when they call him in, he's like, I don't want to be with you guys.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do a lot with that.
And even him, it's funny when they arrest him because of the nature of his being, he is separated from everyone else because he can't be in the Arkham Asylum normal wing because he has to be kept frozen
on ice,
right?
Because he's messed up everything. That would be. We've never seen. Well, we saw one version of him.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
So that's also a villain that I'm like, I really want to get.
I want another shot of that.
Like if we get to the Batman with
Pattinson.
Yeah. I want a Freeze. I don't want to do this again where they're like, it's going to be Penguin and Catwoman. I'm like, great. So we're just remaking Batman Returns now.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, I love Batman Returns.
I do too, but I like Anne Hathaway's Catwoman. I just don't think there's a character that we keep needing to go back.
I only have so many years on this planet. And it seems to take about 3 years to make a Batman film.
Yeah.
So if I'm going to make it to like 70.
Right.
That really is only like 12, 15, 20 more, which sounds like a lot.
Being with Catwoman.
I can't have half of them be the Penguin.
Right.
There's more villains than there are expectations of me to get this movie.
I mean, Batman's Rogue Gallery is nuts, and Spider-Man's starting to do it now, but like, Batman's Rogue Gallery is nuts. And like, dude, give me Mad Hatter. Like, give me ventriloquist. There are enough people to play with in this world that I don't need to keep going.
I would like a ventriloquist one.
I would too.
Who is not my next character because I feel like the ventriloquist gets too close. so many of these characters thematically become similar.
They're
Like
both-
even
yeah.
like Joker, Clayface, and Ventriloquist are all like a performance based. This didn't go well, and now this.
Correct.
Riddler, Joker have kind of the same like, oh, it's a riddle or a joke, and
mess up your brain and keep you guessing. Yeah.
Penguin and Two-Face are
gangster
the
mafia
gangster
ones,
ones.
yeah.
Catwoman's the thief. There's like genres of Batman
Yeah.
villains.
Scarface,
So
yeah, I mean, like it. Yeah.
I think the obvious one is one that, like Freeze, stands alone and above everything else.
Yes.
And it's Poison Ivy.
She is definitely a loner.
Yeah, I think, well, this is also a character, right? Similar to Mr. Freeze, where it's, well, here's what I believe and what I'm about. And it's not really about good or bad. It's about what needs to be done.
Right.
And I think this is another one that if you produced it today, you would just go, well, the earth is dying.
The climate stuff, yeah, she would be perfect right now.
You get Greta Thunberg to
yeah,
play
she
her.
would kill it.
Put her up in front of the Gotham people. It would be incredible.
Yeah.
You have all the pieces are there for this movie. What you really need to do is show the other side of that danger, right? It really is like it either her thing is always I go too far and it's all about the plants,
Right.
which is like, well, no, you need to kind of see her have a balance. You
Right.
would almost need her to win and then like look at her world and be like, well,
I may have gone too far.
this will now just die anyways.
Right.
Or what about this?
Right.
Like you get her to care all about the plants, and then someone's like, "Well, what about the melting ice caps?
Right.
What about the meat industry?" Like you almost start because that's my now favorite part about environmentalism, and by favorite part I mean it's awful, but it kind of makes me laugh.
Sick about their one thing.
It's a competition.
It is.
It's a competition now.
is.
If I go, one of my favorite stories is like I was dating a girl and we went to go get groceries together and I bought Greek yogurt and she's like, Greek yogurt is very bad for the environment. And I was like, okay, well you eat meat every day.
Yeah.
And I don't. So if we're doing a good
this,
place point
right.
system,
Right.
I'm winning the fucking game and I'm gonna have my goddamn Greek
Yeah.
yogurt. So I think kind of positioning her that way to being like, well, it isn't binary and this does need help,
Right.
but you could just open it with like a Gotham forest on fire and no one caring and her being the only one and it just being like, well, now it's too late and I'm going to take you all.
Yeah.
And all you need for the other villain is some terrible politician and like a family that she can hurt.
I love her. I love Pamela so much. I think that character would translate well to having her own, and I think she in this day and age with what we're doing with climate, how everyone's so adamant about climate control and like that environment, she would kill. It makes me so angry because every time I think about Batman and Robin, I'm like, you had 3 of the best villains.
All the pieces were there.
You bombed all 3 of them.
You had some of the biggest actors of the time.
Right.
You had 3 of the best villains, and you were the 4th movie in an up until that point pretty good
solid, right?
franchise.
You had a good percentage.
I don't know what happened. I do like that now. Joel Schumacher's like, I shouldn't have made either of them. They were all mistakes.
Yeah.
I ruined it. It's like, well, we figured it out, buddy. We got
We
there.
got back on track.
But yeah, I think all of those characters, there's a lot to do with. Batman's interesting because his rogue gallery does have a lot of people who are either like symbols of reflection of mental illness or other
Correct.
problems, bigger themes that you can remove.
Yeah.
Where I think if you tried to do something like a Green Goblin movie, he's just a terrorist.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
if you do a Doc Ock movie, it's like, well, he's just a thief.
Yeah.
Want to come watch the man with 8 arms be bad?
I think that happens though when you have a character where the hero himself isn't powered, then the villains end up being more mentally decrepit, if you will, as opposed to where if you have Spider-Man, his villains have to have some type of I'm a thief or some type of power aspect where you're not so much focusing on the person or humanity of the person so much as you are to Batman's id versus.
Well, I was going to say, they've also always just built those characters to have a different pathos.
Right.
And that's very unique to DC.
Yes.
Where, like, DC, when they started, was God's Among Us, and Superman is Hope, and Barry is this, and Wonder Woman is that. And because they went, like, well, they're going to be totems for certain things, the challenge isn't just about strength or speed or agility. It is how do you challenge them mentally? And part of that, I think, does come from them having Superman and going, how do we make this guy interesting? It's by getting you a villain that can go toe-to-toe with him without anything.
Right.
So then you take that and you go, well, then how do we do that for Batman?
Yeah.
Well, if he's this brute, unstoppable force and he has all of these rules, we need a character who just wants him to get rid of those
break
rules.
those, right.
And you go from there.
Yeah.
And that's why I think so many characters in the Batman rogue gallery are like Joker light.
Yeah.
Because we started there to be like, he's this, and then everything else had to be a fraction of that.
A corner of
Or
that.
Bane light, where it's
Right.
like if Joker's the one that fights him mentally,
Then
Bane's the
physically,
one that fights him physically, and then you just go down.
Right. And you'll have some mixtures of both. Yeah, I mean that is how you get to it. You deal with trying to mentally break Batman has consistently been the case outside of then when you get to Bane and Azrael and all of that stuff. So
Right.
It's like Scarecrow, Riddler, all of them are on one side.
Well, and he's also always had this like gothic backdrop and
Correct.
gone back to these like universal monster movie ideas and gangster movie ideas, and these were all kind of stories that had deeper themes or trying to make you empathize with the creature in the Black Lagoon, Frankenstein's monster, Dracula. And I think because they've taken that too,
Right.
where something like Spider-Man was like, have them fight cool people.
What's the design?
Not that those aren't also good villains.
They are.
Those are some of my favorite ones, but really the reality is there's a reason that the MCU villains are always like, and then you get to DC and they're always like pretty good.
Yeah.
They're not all winners, right?
No, but I think each one of the heroes have at least one villain that they can count on. And be like, oh, that's
really-
a solid. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny too because Batman is the one series. Superman a little bit, but he's always kind of been the same. But Batman has also changed his style. He's been super campy at the beginning, and comics
Yeah.
are a little bit light, and then it's switched. But the villains have all sort of altered around whatever era it's been in.
Right.
And that's been fascinating to just watch as a comic fan.
I think that's part of the other reason that they've been so timeless is you can make a Joker like Cesar Romero's
Yeah.
and just have him be like silly and goofy,
Correct.
but then you can also get to this Joaquin Phoenix type character.
Yeah.
He's one of the few like versatile
Yeah.
characters, because I think there is a the guy who drew Batman Year One, his name's evading me right now, but he has a quote where he was like, look, the closer we get to making these characters realistic, the more absurd we're going to realize it is, because we have to keep explaining this. Part of the fun
It's not.
is that they're crazy.
Just right.
Like
They
more,
just are.
which is exactly what happened, right? Like the more we got into like, well, Iron Man's very real. Like our first question was like, okay, well then give your technology to everyone. The more we made Batman like Nolan's universe, we were like, can't he do a lot more for the world?
Like he could do more.
Couldn't
than
he
just
donate
hiding in
his money?
house for like a decade?
Yeah,
That
this
seems weird.
the second you start putting this under microscopes, and then you're like, well, what if it was just who cares?
Right.
What if it was just fake? What if it was all just fake?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that's what Matt Reeves is going to be going to. He's like, look, what if we just made Gotham like the actual Batman comics? Like,
Yes.
we made the super macabre Tim Burton version, and we've done the Christopher Nolan super serious version, and we've had some stuff in between. What if we just go Gotham if this is a comic book movie and just have some effing fun with it?
It is interesting that we've had all these Batman movies, but we haven't really had one yet in the vein of how superhero movies are made now.
Yeah.
And I don't want like a Marvelized
No, I don't
Batman by
either.
any means, but like it is interesting to see as this genre has progressed,
Yeah.
his is kind of the one that's like, no, not yet.
Right.
We're gonna.
Because I want that era where we have a Clayface on screens. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, no, we have to base it in real. I'm like, F that. Put
Well,
Clayface
that
on screen.
kind of became after The Dark Knight Rises. I was like, well, we can't keep making hyper realistic Nolan Batman movies because
Right.
there's just
The
some
villains are
characters.
so nuts.
Freeze, Man Bat,
Yeah. You start getting
Clayface.
that. Yeah. Even Ivy, like she herself is not, but her power set is
Yeah.
a little wonky. Like,
She's a
starting
green
with
person.
Right.
They didn't have any green people. No, sure, we could have kept figuring out ways to
Kind of like
not.
knock it down so it's more more base level.
But like, who wants
But
to
why?
do that?
Right.
I want a
It's like-
giant. I want the Arkham games.
yeah,
I want
Hitler
like
making phone calls on a big teleprompter and just like you're not
some of
close.
the best twists were just like, and you shot the Joker, but oh, it was Clayface the whole time,
Yeah.
and you're like, that's awesome. What a great character. I want a Clayface movie.
Yeah.
I think that'll do it for us.
Indeed.
Next week will be our Joker episode, and I hate saying it, but I guess I don't hate saying it. I hate that I have to say it.
Yeah.
Be safe,
Yeah.
right? Like this is now officially a like
Check your sixes when you go. Yeah.
movie, and unfortunately, that's the world we live in. Like I think when we go see Star Wars, it'll be kind of the same
Yep.
way. But the FBI's already like issued a warning
Make
and
sure you know
found
your
some
exit
stuff
sign. Yeah.
and. So yeah,
saying don't dress as Jokers. By the way, if you see stuff like that, I would go.
see something, say something,
Go, yeah.
right? Like it's what
Let
the
someone know.
old Chicago train system used to say.
Exactly.
If you see something suspicious, just fucking say it. It's really just 2.5 hours of walking Phoenix acting crazy isn't worth
Any type
your
of danger
life
you go through.
or your health.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our show. Leave us a review on iTunes. Like us on Facebook and Twitter at facebook.com/group/Hollywood Already Did It and Twitter at HollywoodADI. We're also on Instagram at Hollywood Already Did It. I'm at As Always Blake and Terrence is at Terrence Tatum, and we will see you next week.
Later.